sources, articles, research our notes, and we pull out those key insights, those nuggets of knowledge, tailored just for you, our mission. Basically, cut through the noise, get you properly informed, maybe with a little bit of, humor to keep you listening. Today, we're tackling something really fascinating and very timely. How is this strategic balance shifting in a critical geopolitical triangle, and what role are missiles, and maybe just as importantly, media narratives playing in that shift? So our deep dive today focuses on this recent, wave of alarm, you could call it, in Turkish media. It was sparked by reports, and we'll get into whether they're confirmed that India might be offering advanced missiles to Greece. And Greece, of course, is a longtime rival of Turkey. It's a pretty complex puzzle, and we're here to help you put those pieces together.
Yeah, and what's really fascinating here, I think, is how quickly perceptions, even ones that aren't confirmed, can become part of the strategic landscape, almost a weapon in themselves. This isn't just about, a potential arms deal somewhere down the line. It's really a story that's woven from heightened tensions, these really long-standing rivalries, and also the powerful way that media can amplify geopolitical anxieties. We're going to try and explore the layers of this specific situation and maybe what it hints at for the broader region. You might think, okay, this is just about military hardware, right? But what's really at play here is how information, how narratives themselves shape the game.
Okay, so let's dive straight into that reported panic then. What our research shows is this significant wave of alarm really rippling through conservative Turkish nationalistic media outlets. We're talking places like TR Haber, Yeni Akit, around the 1st of July, 2025. And their big headline, the core of it was, India might be offering its new long-range land attack cruise missile, the LR-LACM, to Greece. Now, this isn't just, any old missile. It's developed by India's DRDO. That's their Defense Research and Development Organization. And this LR-LACM, it reportedly boasts a pretty striking range, beyond 1,000 kilometers. And it's apparently compatible with both conventional and, significantly, unconventional warheads. So Turkish outlets, they're framing this as nothing less than a profound strategic shift, especially if a system like that were deployed by a NATO country that, often finds itself at odds with Turkey. But, why such a profound reaction to just a potential deal?
Well, the immediate geopolitical implications for the Eastern Mediterranean are pretty stark. Think about it. A missile with that kind of range, if it were in Greece's hands, could hit targets deep inside Turkey. Really deep. It dramatically shortens warning times, changes the whole deterrence calculation. It's a big deal. And we saw Greek defense publications like Geostrategica, which is a major Greek defense outlet. They actually echoed these unverified claims. They pointed to India displaying the missile at the DFE 2025 exhibition in Athens last year. That's Greece's big defense expo. So this initial alarm, it very quickly fed into these broader Turkish narratives, these existing anxieties. Yeni Akit, for instance, they asserted this alleged missile deal as part of a revenge move against Turkey. They directly linked it to Ankara's support for Pakistan. And TR Haber, they took it even further, didn't they? With those alarmist headlines claiming that even Greece's recent purchase of advanced Rafale jets, that wouldn't be enough. They'd still be vulnerable to such potent missile systems. It creates the sense of urgency for Turkey to react, you see. It's really a classic case of perception driving the strategic conversation, maybe even ahead of reality.
Right. And here's where it gets really interesting, because to actually understand this alarm, you've got to unpack the underlying context, the geopolitics. Specifically, that really complex relationship between India and Pakistan and where Turkey fits into that picture. Because you have to remember, back in early May, India launched what it called Operation Sindoor. This was a pretty high-intensity aerial and missile offensive. They said it targeted terror-linked sites deep inside Pakistan and also Pakistan-administered Kashmir. This wasn't just a minor border skirmish. This was a significant military action.
Yeah, it really was. And Turkey's reaction was, swift and very strong. Unequivocally strong, actually. Foreign ministry officials there described Operation Sindoor as provocative. They said it risked igniting all-out war, strong words, between two nuclear-armed neighbors. Ankara went further, too. They condemned the targeting of civilian infrastructure, and they expressed full diplomatic support for Pakistan's demand for an independent investigation into that April 22nd terrorist attack in Pahalgam, which India cited as the trigger for the escalation. We even saw President Erdogan himself personally call Pakistan's prime minister, offering condolences, expressing Turkish solidarity. And interestingly, Ankara also had to actively deny Indian media reports they claimed were backed by alleged sources in RAW, which is India's foreign intelligence agency. They had to deny reports that Turkey had actually dispatched arms to Pakistan during this period. Turkey clarified, saying a Turkish military transport aircraft had simply landed for refueling. nothing more. But it just highlights how quickly even routine things, like a refueling stop, can get pulled into this larger, really charged narrative, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And that fiery reaction from Ankara over Operation Sindoor, it's not happening in isolation, is it? It plays directly into another, maybe even longer-standing geopolitical tension, that deep, often fraught rivalry between Turkey and Greece. And this is where India is increasingly finding itself, perhaps surprisingly, as a partner for Greece. Our sources highlight how India-Greece ties have visibly strengthened. Shared strategic concerns seem to be the driver. We know India recently supplied Rafale jets to Greece, and they've even been evaluating upgrades, apparently, at their joint Rafale simulators. That's a detail that T.R. Haber, the Turkish outlet we mentioned, noted with a very defensive spin, almost like, we see you, we know what you're up to.
Indeed. That decades-long tension between Turkey and Greece, with the constant standoffs in the Aegean and the Mediterranean, that's the essential backdrop here. This isn't just about disputed islands anymore. It's about maritime rights, energy resources, historical grievances, the whole package. So from Turkey's perspective, at least as reflected in its nationalistic media, this warming India-Greece relationship isn't just normal international relations. No, it gets framed as something much more sinister, encirclement and betrayal. It taps into these deeper anxieties Turkey has about its regional security, its influence, and its place in the world.
Okay, let's maybe zoom in a bit now on the actual missiles themselves, the hardware at the heart of this deep dive. India's missile arsenal is, well, it's pretty robust, quite impressive, frankly. The LR-LACM, the one causing the stir, first test-fired in 2024. It offers precision land strike capability over 1,000 kilometers, and again, with both conventional and unconventional payloads. Just to give you some context, that range means it could reach deep into rival territory, posing a really significant, very rapid threat. And then there's another layer to India's missile power, the BrahMos. That's the supersonic cruise missile they co-developed with Russia. It's often cited, particularly in Indian media, as a serious deterrent. Our sources even picked up on the surprising detail that some Indian outlets apparently floated provocations about targeting Turkey with BrahMos. Go. Though it's important to say, experts were pretty quick to dismiss those comments as purely rhetorical, more for domestic chest-thumping than actual policy,
Right. And you also have to factor in India's air defense network. It's anchored around systems like the Akash-SAM, that's their surface-to-air missile system, but also the advanced S-400 systems they acquired, plus various older legacy weapons. And this network, according to reports, really proved its mettle during Operation Sindoor. It apparently neutralized a variety of drone and missile threats, including some allegedly of Chinese and notably Turkish origin. So these demonstrated capabilities, they really underscore why any potential export of something like the LR-LACM would set off alarm bells in Ankara. It's not just the missile's theoretical capability, it's India's proven ability to integrate and effectively use these kinds of advanced systems. That's what worries people.
But Turkey, of course, isn't just sitting back and watching this perceived arms race unfold. Not at all. Ankara has made really significant progress in its own missile and defense industry. It reflects their determination to, well, match capabilities and maintain autonomy. We're talking specifically about the Typhoon, short-range ballistic missile. That was unveiled back in May 2023 and reportedly deployed in early 2025. Reports suggest this missile has a range somewhere between 500 and 800 kilometers, hits Mach 5 speed so incredibly fast, and boasts an accuracy of less than 5 meters. It's pretty clearly seen as Turkey's direct bid to counter and match Indian capabilities, and others in the region too, reinforcing its own strategic weight.
Exactly. And it's not just the Typhoon. Turkey's other defense exports are gaining traction internationally too. Their SAM systems, like the Hisar family, are apparently attracting interest from countries like Bangladesh and Indonesia. It shows Turkey's growing footprint in the global arms market. And of course, we have to mention the continued export and use of their Bayraktar and Akinci UAVs drones. Some Indian sources, as we noted, even allege that Turkish origin drones were used in strike operations against India during Operation Sindoor. Whether true or not, all of this definitely reinforces a sense that Ankara and Delhi are sort of increasingly edging towards a geopolitical arms competition, maybe even a proxy one in some ways. Each side is watching the other's military advancements very, very closely.
So, okay, stepping back a bit, what does all this really mean for the wider geopolitical landscape? It feels absolutely critical here to try and separate the media narratives from the actual policy decisions, because they aren't always the same thing, are they?
Yeah.
No, definitely not. And this raises that really important question about India's actual stance, its real intentions. That claim of a formal LR-LACM delivery to Greece. As we said, it remains unconfirmed. Sure, Indian missile displays were seen in Athens at that defense expo, but there's just no solid sign of a formal deal being struck or deliveries happening. Our sources tend to suggest that India's defense ties with Greece, while they are getting stronger, are still largely centered on things like the Rafale jets, joint exercises, not necessarily missile transfers of this magnitude, at least not yet. Look, New Delhi is very aware of the geopolitical sensitivities involved. Turkey is still a key player within NATO, and it has significant influence in relations with Muslim majority countries. That matters to India. So therefore, sources suggest this whole missile diplomacy angle might be more about, well, strategic posturing. India signaling its deterrence capabilities, projecting its growing defense industry power into a region where that Turkey-Greece rivalry is incredibly intense. It's perhaps more about signaling than actually delivering at this stage. It's a chess move, like you said, not necessarily checkmate.
Which brings us right back to the role of the Turkish media in shaping this narrative. We've seen this pattern before, haven't we? Nationalistic Turkish outlets are, well, known for amplifying foreign military capabilities. Often it seems to rally domestic support, or perhaps to underscore perceived external threats, justifying their own military spending or posture. We saw something similar, for example, with earlier claims, perhaps overstated claims, about Turkey's Altay tank. Syndic nationalist media at the time asserted that both Greece and India were supposedly panicking over its deployment. It's a familiar tactic, perhaps, shaping public opinion, creating that shared sense of urgency, often well before any concrete military shift actually happens on the ground.
Exactly. And this panic, whether it's genuinely felt or somewhat manufactured for effect, it feeds into those deeper regional anxieties for Ankara. Turkey views regions like Syria, Libya, the Eastern Mediterranean, the Caucasus. These are seen as critical security zones where maintaining a military edge is considered absolutely paramount. So naturally, closer India-Greece defense cooperation, especially if it involves advanced systems, would heighten those concerns. It plays right into that perception Turkey seems to have of being strategically encircled or contained. It's all about that perceived balance of power in Ankara's immediate neighborhood.
Okay, broadening the view just a bit more, how does Athens see all this? What's Greece's perspective in this triangle?
Well, from Greece's perspective, it seems pretty clear they view India as a valuable strategic partner. It's likely seen as a way to reinforce their own deterrence against perceived Turkish assertiveness or moves in contested regions like the Aegean or Eastern Mediterranean. It's an interesting alignment, diversifying Greece's strategic partnerships beyond just NATO and the EU.
And what about India's broader goals here? What's in it for them?
For India, these kinds of partnerships serve multiple strategic goals, probably. One is leveraging them to gain more of a diplomatic foothold in Europe. Another is diversifying its defense export portfolio beyond its traditional buyers in Asia and Africa. And, maybe crucially, it serves to counterbalance China's increasing alignment with both Pakistan and, significantly, Turkey. It's part of a bigger geopolitical game. However, it's important to note, analysts do caution that pushing these narratives too hard, especially the missile one, could dangerously inflame that already tense NATO-Turkey relationship. Or it could spark a more overt and potentially dangerous competition over missile deployment platforms in the region. And again, just to be clear for everyone listening, we are reporting on these viewpoints from the sources we reviewed. We're not endorsing them, just laying out the different perspectives.
Right, absolutely crucial point. So after digging through all of this, what's the reality check? Is the panic real, or is it mostly, strategic messaging?
Well, the hard evidence for an actual formal LR-LACM delivery to Greece is, as we've said, thin, very thin at this point.
Yeah.
Yes, Indian missile mock-ups or displays were seen in Athens. That happened. But there's no official confirmation of a transfer deal from either Greek or Indian defense publications, not even the ones that were initially referenced in those Turkish media reports. The geopolitical context, though, that definitely matters. That's real. Turkey's very vocal alignment with Pakistan after Operation Sindoor and India's robust response during that operation, they have certainly reinforced mutual suspicion. That's undeniable. So it really seems like media outlets on both sides are actively engaging in strategic messaging right now. They're aiming to shape perceptions, influence diplomatic maneuvers, even if the actual military moves remain largely, diplomatic or below the radar for now. It's almost like a geopolitical game of telephone, isn't it? Where a whisper in one capital becomes amplified into a shout in another, possibly by design.
Okay, so let's try and summarize the key takeaways from this deep dive for you, the listener. First takeaway, the Turkish press alarm. You've got nationalistic outlets in Turkey sounding the alarm, warning that India might supply its advanced LR-LACM missile to Greece. They're framing it as a direct strategic counter to Ankara. This is as much narrative as it is news.
Second, the Indian strike and Turkish reaction, remember, Operation Sindoor, that Indian military action triggered outrage in Turkey and strong diplomatic support for Pakistan. And significantly, Turkey found itself accused of aiding Pakistan with drones, which just ratcheted up the suspicion between Delhi and Ankara.
Third, the missile posture shift. India's growing air and land-range capabilities, particularly its advanced missile tech and its defense exports, they are genuinely challenging the existing strategic status quo, certainly in the Eastern Mediterranean. It's creating new calculations for everyone involved.
Fourth, Ankara's defense response. Turkey isn't just reacting passively. The rapid development and deployment of its own Typhoon missile, plus exportable SAM systems like Hisar, show Ankara's active drive to maintain its own military edge and strategic autonomy. They are responding in kind.
And finally, fifth, diplomatic ripples. This whole narrative, amplified heavily by the media, is feeding into broader strategic anxiety. Turkey feels a sense of encirclement, rightly or wrongly. Meanwhile, India seems keen to boost its defense presence and influence, making Greece a somewhat surprising but increasingly pivotal focal point in this complex geopolitical triangle.
Yeah, absolutely. For now, it seems this panic exists primarily in the media space, in the realm of perception. But, and this is the key thing, that perception shift, it's already underway. And that in itself is a powerful force in international relations. The real test, the confirmation, will only come with visible deliveries or formal announced deals. Until then, what we're seeing is maybe the front line of a strategic contest being fought not just with potential hardware, but very much with headlines and narratives.
That's a really profound thought to end on. So what does this all mean for you as someone watching these global affairs unfold?
Well, perhaps consider how national media narratives, even ones based on unconfirmed reports or speculation, can actually serve as the front line of a strategic contest. How they can shape public opinion, influence diplomatic maneuvers, perhaps even provoke reactions long before any actual policy changes happen or weapons are deployed. It's a potent reminder, isn't it, that what we read and hear, the stories being told, can sometimes be just as impactful,